Clara glanced at her reflection in the pristine glass of the upscale restaurant, fidgeting with the ends of her auburn hair. The glittering chandeliers above cast a warm glow, but the light felt harsh against her skin. She was just a common woman, dressed modestly for what was meant to be a special evening, yet here she was, surrounded by opulence that only magnified her ordinary life. Before she could fully process her anxiety, the door swung open, drawing her gaze from the mirror. Before you skip, just remember, channels like this only survive if you hit subscribe. Otherwise, stories like this one just disappear. In that moment, the world beyond the entrance faded into obscurity, eclipsed by the striking figure that walked through the threshold. Luca Moretti, the Italian mafia boss, commanded attention like no other. His tailored suit clung to his athletic frame in a way that exuded a dangerous confidence. The low murmurs of conversation halted. Even the clinking of cutlery paused as he strode in, radiating power and allure. Clara's heart quickened, an instinctual response stirring within her. She had heard whispers of him, tales that danced at the fringes of her awareness, yet she never imagined she would witness his presence firsthand. Luca surveyed the room with piercing eyes, scanning the crowd as if calculating each person's worth. Clara felt a shiver race down her spine, as if he had seen her too, truly seen her. The sharpness of his gaze bore into her, stirring a mix of apprehension and a dangerous thrill. It was as if the very air around her thickened, transforming the upscale ambiance into something tinged with risk. Clara's mind raced, concocting a flurry of thoughts about the mafia world. It was all so romanticized in movies and books, the allure of danger, the charm of ruthless men drawn into a life of crime. Yet here she was, standing at the precipice of that world, feeling inexplicably drawn to a man wrapped in darkness. The evening suddenly felt precarious, a thin line separating her ordinary existence from the chaos that simmered just beneath the surface of Luca's world. She forced a smile to mask her unease, glancing at her friends who were already whispering excitedly about the legendary boss. They were enthralled by the glitz surrounding him, lost in their fantasies of glamour and excitement. But Clara remained rooted in reality, grappling with the tension that thrummed between her instincts and the curiosity that consumed her thoughts. How had she found herself here in the same space as a man who held such power and influence? As if sensing her internal struggle, Luca's gaze flicked toward her again. Their eyes locked for a fleeting moment, and Clara felt the ground shift beneath her feet. There was an intensity within him, a magnetism that suggested he was both predator and protector. The air seemed charged, each heartbeat echoing in her ears as she fought to hold on to her sense of self. She had never been one to embrace danger, but with him, everything felt different, electric. In a moment that felt like an eternity, he moved closer, each stride purposeful, deliberate. She could feel her heart racing as he approached, the world around her fading into a soft blur. Clara's breath caught in her throat as he stopped in front of her, the noise of the restaurant dimming into a background hum. "Are you enjoying your evening?" Luca's voice was smooth as silk, but underpinned by a hint of steel. It sent a thrill through her, igniting a spark of something she couldn't quite name. Yes, it's lovely," she stammered, caught off guard by the depth of his gaze. A smile curled at the corners of his lips, a mix of amusement and something darker, something that sent her heart racing even faster. "Lovely is good," he replied, leaning slightly closer, a subtle move that sent heat radiating through Clara. She could smell the subtle hint of his cologne, a blend of cedarwood and something unmistakably masculine. "But tell me, do you often find yourself in places like this, surrounded by such powerful company?" His tone held a teasing lilt, yet his eyes bore into hers with an intensity that made her want to retreat and stay at once. Clara could feel her cheeks flush, her naivety in this world laid bare before him. "Not really," she admitted, swallowing hard. "I usually prefer quieter places. And yet here you are," he said, his expression shifting slightly as if he found her admission intriguing. It takes courage to step into new realms. There was something else in his eyes now, a flicker of something deeper. Was it recognition? Understanding? Caught in the orbit of his charisma, Clara felt the divide between their worlds narrowing. The thoughts that had initially kept her guard up began to dissolve, replaced by an inexplicable connection that suggested this was not merely coincidence. The tension hung between them, charged and heavy, igniting an impulse in her she had never known existed. Just as the moment stretched, threatening to fold everything Clara had ever known into something irretrievable, Luca backed away slightly, his demeanor shifting to a more businesslike posture. The allure of danger still lingered, but now he seemed more a man in control than a figure of chaos. "I hope you enjoy your evening, Clara. The city has a way of revealing secrets, but not all secrets are meant to be uncovered." The weight of his words settled between them, a promise coated in uncertainty. As he stepped back, the distance felt palpable, a reminder of the boundaries that still existed, even in this charged atmosphere. Clara was left grasping for understanding, her mind racing with curiosity about the man before her. This encounter, fleeting yet profound, had ignited something within her, an ember that called to be explored. It was not just the thrill of danger that exhilarated her, but the potential of connection to a world she had only dreamed about. And as Luca turned away, mingling back into the throng of well-dressed patrons, Clara knew that this was merely the beginning. Something had shifted irrevocably within her, and the dangerous allure of the mafia world was no longer just a distant fantasy. It was now tantalizingly close, just out of reach, leaving her to ponder what would come next in this unwritten tale. Clara's heart raced as she stood before Luca, the magnetic pull between them undeniable. His presence seemed to wrap around her, drawing her away from the ordinary life she had known. For a fleeting moment, doubts and fears slipped into the background, overshadowed by an intoxicating blend of curiosity and desire. She was acutely aware of the weight of his gaze, the way it seemed to strip her of her defenses, exposing the raw vulnerability she had carefully shielded. "How about a drink?" he offered, his voice a low murmur that sent shivers down her spine. The suggestion hung in the air between them, electric and charged. Clara hesitated, her instincts warning her about the dangers lurking within his world. Yet a part of her was irresistibly pulled toward him. "Sure," she managed to reply, her voice barely above a whisper. As he turned to lead her towards the bar, Clara's pulse quickened. Every step they took felt monumental, as if she were crossing an unseen threshold into a realm where danger and allure danced hand in hand. The bar was sleek and modern, a stark contrast to the warm, wooden accents of the restaurant. Luca ordered a whiskey neat, his voice confident and commanding. Clara opted for a simple soda, her mind racing with uncertainty. As they settled into their seats, the conversation began to flow more naturally, yet Clara felt a distinct barrier between them, one that was both thrilling and terrifying. "So Clara," Luca began, his gaze focused intently on her, "what brings you to a place like this?" His question was casual, yet there was an underlying intensity that made her stomach flutter. She could sense that he was genuinely interested, but also probing, testing her resolve. "I work in marketing," she replied, trying to sound casual despite the weight of his attention. "I wanted to celebrate a small victory at work with friends." Her words felt mundane in the face of his magnetic charisma. "A victory?" He arched an eyebrow, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. "That sounds like a reason to celebrate. In my world, victories are rarely celebrated, only survived." The darkness in his words sent a chill through her, revealing a glimpse of the shadows that loomed over his life. Clara blinked, trying to process his statement. "I suppose that's the nature of high stakes," she said, attempting to steer the conversation back to safer waters. But Luca's gaze was unyielding, his interest piqued. "Tell me more about your work," he urged, leaning closer. The scent of his cologne enveloped her, drawing her deeper into his orbit. She felt a mix of panic and exhilaration, the allure of his world pulling her in with each passing second. As she shared details of her job, Clara noticed the way his expression shifted. He was not just listening, but dissecting her. There was something in the way he leaned in, an intensity that suggested he was assessing her character, searching for vulnerabilities. It made her uneasy, yet she found herself wanting to impress him, to earn his approval. "Your determination is commendable," he remarked, his voice smooth and laced with admiration. "But don't you ever want more? More than just victories?" His question hung heavy in the air, and Clara felt a stir of something deep within her. "More?" she echoed, caught off guard. "I'm not sure what you mean." Luca's gaze didn't waver. There was a flicker of something. Longing, perhaps. "Life is too short to settle for mediocrity. You have fire in you, Clara. I can see it." His words felt like a challenge, igniting a spark of ambition she had buried beneath practicality. "Well, I've always believed in taking things one step at a time," she replied cautiously, aware that her life had been meticulously organized. "But maybe I should aim higher." He smiled, the corners of his mouth curling in approval. "Good. Ambition is a powerful thing. It drives people to achieve extraordinary feats." Clara felt a rush of exhilaration at his words, but it was intertwined with the realization of the world he inhabited. "What about you? You seem to have everything," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "What drives you?" His expression shifted, the flicker of vulnerability surfacing for just a moment before he masked it with a facade of indifference. "Power is a double-edged sword. It brings success but isolates you from everyone else." His words hung in the air like a thick fog, and Clara felt a pang of empathy for the man who wielded such influence, yet felt so alone. "Is that why you're here?" she asked, probing deeper. "To escape that isolation?" He chuckled softly, the sound deep and resonant. "Perhaps. Or maybe to find someone who is not afraid of the darkness that surrounds me." His gaze bore into hers, intense and searching, and Clara felt the full weight of his unspoken past pressing down. As the evening progressed, Clara's curiosity about Luca grew stronger, mingling dangerously with her attraction. She found herself hanging on his every word, captivated by the enigmatic man who exuded danger, yet offered a glimpse of vulnerability. There was a complexity in him that intrigued her, a contradiction that stirred her emotions. Yet, as much as she wanted to delve deeper into his world, she could not shake the warning bells ringing in her mind. This was a man who belonged to a life fraught with peril, a life she had never wanted to be a part of. And yet every moment spent with him felt like an exhilarating risk she was willing to take. "Tell me, Clara," Luca said, his voice low and smooth, "what would you do if you could escape all your limitations?" The question caught her off guard, and for a moment she was struck speechless. The thought of freedom, of breaking free from her mundane life, sent a thrill through her. "I suppose I'd travel," she admitted, her voice laced with longing. "I'd go to places I've only ever dreamed of." "Then let's make it happen," he said, his eyes glinting with mischief. "Life is too short for hesitation." Clara's heart raced at the implications of his words. The idea of stepping into his world, of embarking on an adventure that defied her ordinary existence, felt both terrifying and exhilarating. But could she trust this man who danced on the edge of danger? As the evening drew to a close, Clara found herself lost in thought, her mind swirling with possibilities. She had entered the restaurant a common woman, but now, standing before Luca, she felt the stirrings of something more, an awakening. The tension between them crackled, promising a connection that could unravel the very fabric of her life. As they exchanged numbers and promises to meet again, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The allure of the unknown beckoned, and she was caught in its grasp, teetering on the brink of a world that could either liberate or consume her. Clara felt the tension ripple through the air as Luca leaned back in his seat, his eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that made her heart flutter. The conversation had taken a turn she hadn't anticipated, and every word he spoke seemed to slice through the veil of normalcy she had clung to. The whiskey glass in front of him gleamed under the dim lighting, a stark reminder of the world he inhabited, one steeped in power, danger, and unspoken rules. "Ambition is a double-edged sword," he said, his voice low, carrying an undercurrent of truth. It can lead you to greatness or drag you into the depths of despair. Clara's pulse quickened at his words. They resonated with her, yet she couldn't shake the sense that they held a deeper meaning. She was drawn to his raw honesty, but a sliver of fear crept into her mind. What had he sacrificed to obtain the power he wielded? "What do you mean?" she asked. Her curiosity piqued, despite her better judgment. His expression darkened slightly, and for a heartbeat she glimpsed a flicker of vulnerability buried beneath his confident facade. "It's easier to destroy than to build, Clara. I've seen what happens when the wrong people hold power. They crush everything in their path." His tone was grave, and she felt the weight of his past press down on them. "What's your story, Luca?" she pressed, her voice steady despite the rapid beating of her heart. "You speak as though you've lived through it." A shadow passed over his face, and for a moment she thought he might withdraw. But instead, he leaned closer, his gaze unwavering. "You wouldn't believe it if I told you," he replied softly, his words laced with both reluctance and an invitation to understand. "I've had to make choices that haunt me, choices that define me." The air grew thick with unspoken truths, and Clara felt her heart tugging her toward him, even as her mind warned her to tread carefully. Here was a man with power, a man who could change her life in ways she had never imagined. Yet there existed a darkness in him that she couldn't fully comprehend. "Maybe I would believe you," she challenged, her voice steadying. "Sometimes it helps to share those burdens." A flicker of surprise crossed his features, quickly replaced by a smirk. "You're a brave woman, Clara. Most would rather turn away than confront the truth." "Maybe I'm just curious," she countered, her pulse quickening once more. "Or maybe I want to understand the man behind the reputation." Luca's gaze softened, and for a moment, the magnetic pull between them was almost palpable. "There are things I can't share, things that would put you in danger," he warned, his voice dropping to a murmur. "But if you're willing to step into my world, I can show you what it means to truly live." The invitation sent a shiver down her spine. She was teetering on the edge of a precipice, and she could feel the thrill of the unknown beckoning her closer. Yet, doubt loomed in the back of her mind. "And what would that entail?" she asked, her voice steady despite the tumult inside. "Adventure, excitement, and yes, danger," he replied, his tone turning serious. "You'll see things that will change your perspective forever." Clara's heart raced at the prospect of stepping into a world so vastly different from her own. "What about the people you associate with? I've heard whispers, Luca. They say your connections run deep and dark." He chuckled, a deep, rich sound that sent warmth through her. "Whispers can be deceptive. There's a difference between what people assume and the reality of my life. I protect what's mine, Clara. Those I care about don't get hurt." His words hung heavy in the air, and Clara felt the walls she had built around her heart begin to crack. The allure of his world was intoxicating, yet the reality of what he represented was equally terrifying. "How do I know you won't drag me into something I can't escape?" she challenged, her voice barely above a whisper. Luca's expression shifted, a flicker of something vulnerable flashing in his eyes. "You'll have to trust me, Clara. I know trust is earned, not given, but I promise to keep you safe." Clara felt her breath hitch, caught in the tension of the moment. Trust was a fragile thing, yet she found herself wanting to give it to him. The chemistry between them crackled like electricity, and she was torn between caution and an overwhelming desire to dive deeper into the unknown. "Tell me something true," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why are you drawn to me?" Luca's gaze held hers, steady and unwavering. "Because you're different. You see through the mask, and that intrigues me." The sincerity in his voice sent a jolt of realization through Clara. He was opening himself up to her, and it was both exhilarating and terrifying. "And what if that intrigues me too?" she asked, her heart racing. "Then perhaps we're both in deeper than we know," he replied, a hint of a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Before she could respond, the atmosphere shifted, a palpable tension weaving through the air. Clara's instincts flared, sensing the undercurrents of danger. Luca's expression hardened as he scanned the room, his demeanor shifting from magnetic to predatory in an instant. "Stay close," he warned, his voice low and serious. "What's happening?" she asked, suddenly aware of the shadows gathering around them. "Just a precaution," he murmured, his attention focused on a group of men entering the bar. Clara felt her heart rate spike. It was clear that Luca's world was more perilous than she had initially realized. "Who are they?" she questioned, anxiety creeping into her voice. "Business associates," he replied tersely, his body tense. "But not the kind you want to be around." Clara's mind raced as she tried to process the shift in their dynamic. She had stepped into a world where danger and allure intertwined, and now, standing beside this enigmatic man, she was faced with a choice. Would she embrace the thrill of the unknown, or retreat to the safety of her ordinary life? As Luca's gaze locked onto hers, she saw a flicker of something more in his eyes, a plea, perhaps, for understanding. "Clara, whatever happens next, remember that I'm here to protect you," he said, his voice softening slightly despite the tension. The moments stretched between them, filled with unspoken promises and a burgeoning connection that defied the chaos around them. Clara's heart pounded in her chest, and in that instant, she knew she was at a crossroads. The choice she made could change everything. "Let's see what happens," she replied, her voice steady despite the uncertainty. Luca's lips curled into a grin, and as they stood together, the world outside faded away, leaving only the two of them and the dangerous thrill of what lay ahead. In that moment, Clara realized she was no longer just a common woman. She was stepping into a story that would test her limits, challenge her heart, and ultimately decide her fate. Clara's breath caught in her throat as Luca's words hung ominously in the air. The weight of his secrets pressed down on her, igniting a flicker of determination within. She had always been the cautious one, the observer, but the allure of Luca's world and the mystery surrounding his life began to chip away at her resolve. "You mentioned danger, Luca," she said, her voice steadying. "But what does that truly mean for someone like me?" Luca leaned forward, his expression serious, the flickering candlelight casting shadows across his chiseled features. "It means threats that lurk in the shadows, rivals who don't play by the rules. My life isn't just about the power I wield, it's also about the enemies I've made along the way." The intensity in his gaze deepened, revealing layers of complexity that made her heart race. "And if you step into my world, you need to be aware of the risks." Clara swallowed hard, her pulse quickening. "I'm not afraid of danger," she replied, surprising herself with her boldness. The truth was, she had spent too long living in the safety of her routines, and the thrill of the unknown called to her like a siren's song. "But I want to understand. I want to know what I'm getting into." Luca's lips curled into a faint smile, a combination of admiration and amusement. "You've got spirit, Clara. I like that." He paused, and she could sense the wheels turning in his mind. "But spirit alone won't protect you. You need to learn how to navigate this world." Before Clara could respond, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. The door to the lounge swung open, and a figure stepped inside, tall, with a swagger that radiated confidence. The man surveyed the room, his gaze landing squarely on Luca. Clara felt an icy chill race down her spine as she recognized the tension in Luca's posture. This was no mere acquaintance. This was a rival. "Luca Moretti," the newcomer drawled, a smirk playing on his lips. "I didn't expect to find you here, sharing drinks with the common folk." The disdain in his voice was palpable, and Clara sensed the animosity swirling in the air like a storm about to break. Luca's expression hardened, transforming from the charming man she had begun to know into a cold, calculating force. "What do you want, Marco?" he asked. His tone clipped. Clara could feel the shift in the energy between them, thick and charged with unspoken history. Marco stepped closer, his eyes flicking to Clara before returning to Luca. "Just came to see how you were handling your little empire. Heard some interesting whispers," He paused, letting the words hang heavily between them. They say you're getting soft, Moretti. Or is it just that you're distracted by pretty redheads? Clara's heart raced, a mix of anger and fear coursing through her veins. She didn't want to be a pawn in this game of power. Luca's jaw clenched, and she could almost see the internal battle raging within him. He was torn between maintaining his composure and unleashing the fury that simmered beneath the surface. "I'm not here for your games, Marco," Luca replied, his voice low and dangerous. "Leave while you still can." Marco chuckled, an arrogant sound that only added to the tension in the room. "You think you can intimidate me? You've lost your edge, Luca. I'm not afraid of you or your threats." He stepped even closer, his presence imposing. Clara could sense the invisible line being drawn, one that separated power from vulnerability, and she felt the weight of her decision pressing down on her. In that moment, Clara realized that this was her chance to step out from the shadows of her ordinary life. She could either remain passive or take a stand beside the man who had drawn her into this whirlwind. Summoning every ounce of courage, she moved closer to Luca, her heart pounding in her chest. "I won't let you intimidate us," she said, her voice stronger than she felt. "This isn't just your world, Marco. It's mine too." Luca's gaze flicked to her, surprise and admiration mingling in his eyes. It was a fleeting moment, but it ignited something within her. She wasn't just an observer anymore, she was an active participant in this dangerous game. Marco's smirk faltered as he appraised Clara with a new interest. "Look at you, playing the hero. It's cute, but you're out of your league." He turned back to Luca, a predatory glint in his eye. "But if you keep her around, you'll find out just how deep the waters can get." Clara felt a surge of defiance. "I'm not afraid of the waters," she asserted, her voice steady as she met Marco's gaze. "And neither is Luca. Isn't that right?" Luca's lips twitched in a ghost of a smile, a warmth spreading through her as he nodded slightly, his pride evident. Clara could sense that this was a pivotal moment, one that would define their relationship moving forward. She was no longer just a curious bystander. She had taken a stand, and she was ready to embrace the chaos that came with it. "Leave," Luca commanded Marco, his voice low, laced with authority. "You don't want to test me today." With a begrudging nod, Marco backed away, his smirk replaced by an unreadable expression. "This isn't over, Moretti. You'll regret this." With that, he turned on his heel and exited the lounge, leaving behind an electric silence that buzzed in the air. Turning to Clara, Luca's expression shifted, revealing a mix of gratitude and awe. "You shouldn't have done that," he said, his voice low but filled with an unexpected warmth. It was dangerous. Clara's heart raced, but she felt alive in a way she hadn't before. "I know," she replied, her breath still shaky, "but I can't just stand by and let someone like him intimidate us. I want to be a part of this with you, Luca. I want to understand and fight alongside you." Luca's eyes softened, and for the first time, she saw a flicker of hope in his gaze, a promise of something more. "Then we'll face it together," he said, his voice low and firm. "But you need to trust me completely. It's not just about the danger. It's about the truth of who I am and what I do." Clara nodded, feeling a new resolve solidify within her. She was ready to embrace the tumultuous journey ahead, to dive deeper into the world he inhabited. As they stood together, united against the threat that loomed, she knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning, and she was ready to fight for what she wanted. It was a decision that would change everything, setting them both on a path of love, danger, and an unbreakable bond that would test the limits of their hearts. Clara's declaration hung in the air, a fragile yet defiant shield against Marco's menacing presence. Luca's eyes widened, momentarily reflecting the shock of her boldness. But then admiration flickered across his features. The tension thickened like fog, swirling around them as Marco chuckled derisively. "Is that supposed to intimidate me, little girl?" he sneered, his gaze glimmering with a predatory gleam. But Clara stood her ground, heart pounding, rooted beside Luca. The stakes had never felt higher. She understood now the power dynamics at play. Luca was not just a man, but a force, a leader in a world where authority was often enforced by fear. Yet, she refused to be a mere spectator in this dangerous game. "I'm not afraid of you, Marco," she retorted, her voice unwavering, "and I won't let you bully us." Luca turned slightly, his presence amplifying her courage. It was as if he drew strength from her conviction, and she sensed the tides shifting. Marco's smirk faltered, replaced with irritation. "You think you can play with the big boys, redhead. You have no idea what you're getting into." His tone dripped with condescension, but Clara felt a spark ignite within her. "I may not know everything," she admitted, her voice steady, "but I know enough to recognize a coward when I see one." The words were raw and unfiltered, a reflection of the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Luca's gaze flicked back to her, surprise mingling with respect, as Marco recoiled slightly, the mask of arrogance slipping. "You've chosen the wrong side, Clara," Marco warned, stepping closer, invading her space. The air crackled with tension as Luca's body shifted protectively, bringing Clara back behind him. "You don't know what he's capable of. He's losing his grip, and soon it'll be too late for you." Luca's expression turned steely, his jaw tightened as he faced Marco, and Clara could see the simmering rage beneath his calm facade. "This isn't about power games anymore, Marco. This is about survival." The weight of his words reverberated in the air, a stark warning that sent chills down Clara's spine. Marco laughed, a harsh, mocking sound that echoed through the room. "Survival? You think you can protect her? She's a liability, Luca. Your feelings for her are clouding your judgment." Clara felt a tang of fear mixed with anger at the casual way Marco dismissed her worth. Luca's eyes darkened, and a flicker of vulnerability crossed his face, a glimpse of the man beneath the hardened exterior. "You know nothing about her," he snapped, his voice low and dangerous. "You underestimate her strength, and that will be your downfall." The intensity of the moment swelled as Clara stepped forward, feeling the heat radiating from Luca's body. The electricity between them crackled, igniting a rush of emotions she had barely begun to comprehend. "I'm not a liability," she declared, her voice ringing with conviction. "I'm here, and I choose to stand with him." The declaration was a revelation, a pivotal shift that solidified her place in both their worlds. Marco's expression soured, and Clara could see the gears turning in his mind, calculating his next move. "This is your last chance, Luca. You're playing a dangerous game, and soon you'll find there are consequences for your choices." With a final, contemptuous look at Clara, he backed away, leaving the room with a lingering sense of menace. As the door closed behind him, the silence that followed felt deafening. Clara turned to Luca, her heart racing. The atmosphere had shifted, the threat was real, and the consequences of their choices loomed heavily in the air. "What now?" she asked, her voice a whisper, uncertainty creeping in. Luca stepped closer, the warmth of his presence enveloping her. "Now we prepare," he said, his tone firm yet gentle, a blend of determination and vulnerability. Marco's warning was rooted in truth. "There are risks, and I won't let anything happen to you." The sincerity in his voice sent a rush of warmth through her, yet it also struck a chord of fear. "What do you mean?" she pressed, her brows knitting together. "What kind of preparation are we talking about?" She needed to understand the depths of the world she was stepping into. Luca's gaze softened, and for a moment it felt as if they were the only two people in the room. "I need to protect you," he replied, the weight of his words settling between them. "But I can't do it alone. You have to be willing to fight alongside me." Clara took a deep breath, uncertainty mingling with newfound resolve. "I didn't come this far to back down now, Luca. I'm all in." The declaration was fierce, a promise forged in the fire of their shared experiences. Luca's lips curled into a faint smile, and there was a light in his eyes that took her breath away. "Then we will face whatever comes together." the bond between them strengthened, an unbreakable thread woven through shared bravery and unspoken fears. In that moment, Clara realized just how deeply she had fallen for Luca. He was not just a mafia boss. He was a man burdened by his past, yet fiercely dedicated to those he cared about. And as she stood beside him, she felt a sense of belonging she had never known before. But beneath the warmth of their connection, the shadows loomed larger than ever. Clara's heart raced at the thought of what lay ahead, the danger that awaited them, the sacrifices they might have to make. She understood now that the stakes were high, but with Luca at her side, she felt ready to face whatever came their way. As the night deepened, leaving the remnants of Marco's threat behind, Clara and Luca shared a moment of quiet understanding. They were two souls intertwined in a world of danger, yet united by a fierce loyalty, and in that unity lay the strength to confront the darkness that threatened to engulf them both. As they prepared to face the uncertain future, Clara knew one thing for certain: there was no turning back. They were in this together, and together they would forge a path through the chaos ahead, hand in hand, hearts entwined. Clara's heart raced as the door swung shut behind Marco, leaving an unsettling silence in its wake. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her shoulders, the aftermath of their confrontation swirling in her mind. Luca remained close, his presence a steady anchor in the storm of emotions that threatened to overwhelm her. As she turned towards him, the intensity of his gaze met hers, a mixture of concern and admiration reflecting in his deep brown eyes. "Are you all right?" he asked softly, the gentleness of his tone contrasting sharply with the tension that had just unfolded. Clara nodded, though uncertainty still lingered within her. "I'm fine, just processing everything." She took a deep breath, trying to steady her racing thoughts. The encounter with Marco had been a turning point, a catalyst that propelled her deeper into a world she had barely begun to understand. Luca's expression shifted, a flicker of something unguarded passing across his face. "You were incredibly brave back there," he said, his voice low and sincere. "I'm not sure many would have stood up to Marco like that." Clara felt warmth bloom in her chest at his words, but the reality of their situation loomed over them like a storm cloud. "But what does it mean for us?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Luca sighed, running a hand through his dark hair as he considered her question. "It means we have to be prepared for what's coming. Marco doesn't take threats lightly, and your declaration has put a target on us." The gravity of his words settled heavily between them, the threat of danger a constant reminder of the stakes they faced together. "Do you think he'll retaliate?" Clara pressed, a hint of fear inching into her voice. Luca stepped closer, his eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that sent shivers down her spine. "He will. But I won't let anything happen to you, Clara. I promise." His voice was a solid vow, and in that moment, she believed him. Yet as the warmth of his promise enveloped her, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that there was more Luca needed to share. Secrets buried deep in his past that shaped the man standing before her. "Luca," she began hesitantly, "there's something you've been holding back, isn't there? Something about your past that connects to all of this?" His expression shifted, a shadow passing over his features. "It's not something I like to talk about," he replied, his tone guarded. "But if we're going to face this together, you deserve to know." Clara felt her heart quicken at his words, her curiosity piqued. "I want to understand you, Luca. I want to know everything." He took a deep breath, as if steeling himself before revealing a long-held truth. "I grew up in this world," he began, his voice steady but laced with emotion. "My father was a powerful figure in the mafia, and I was thrust into this life from a young age. I learned quickly that loyalty and strength were everything. But I also learned the cost of power, what it takes to protect those you care about." Clara felt a pang of sympathy at the vulnerability in his admission. "But did you want this life?" she asked, her voice gentle. "Or did you feel trapped by it?" Luca's eyes softened, and for a moment she saw the boy he once was, lost in the shadow of expectations. "There were times I wanted to escape, to be normal. But the ties run deep, Clara. My family's legacy is not something you can simply walk away from. His words resonated within her, illuminating a path through the darkness that had clouded her understanding of him. "And now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What do you want now?" Luca stepped closer, the space between them charged with unspoken emotions. "I want to protect you and build a future that isn't defined by my past," he said, his gaze unwavering. "But it's complicated. Marco won't let us go easily, and we'll have to fight to carve our own path." Clara felt a surge of determination rise within her, fueled by the depth of their connection. "Then we'll fight together. I won't back down now, not after everything we faced." She could see the flicker of hope in Luca's eyes, and it ignited a fire within her, a promise that they would not only survive, but thrive against all odds. As they stood together, the weight of the world around them softened. Clara reached out, taking Luca's hand in hers, feeling the warmth and strength radiating from him. "We'll face whatever comes next," she declared, her voice firm. "Together." He squeezed her hand, a silent agreement passing between them. In that moment, Clara knew they were bound by more than just shared danger. They were tethered by a mutual understanding that transcended the chaos of their lives. The past might have shaped them, but it was the future they were now willing to fight for. "I'm glad you're with me," he replied, a slight smile breaking through the tension. "You're more than I ever expected to find in this world." Clara felt her cheeks flush as she met his gaze. There was a sincerity in his words that made her heart soar, a connection deeper than she had ever anticipated. "And you're more than I could have hoped for," she confessed, the weight of her feelings finally spilling into the open. Before the moment could grow heavy with unspoken expectations, Luca pulled her closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Let's make a plan. We need to be ready for whatever Marco throws our way." Clara nodded, her resolve sharpening as they began to strategize their next steps. The world outside was still fraught with danger, but together they were a force, stronger and more determined than ever. As the initial fear of the unknown began to dissipate, Clara felt a profound sense of commitment blossom between them. They would confront their pasts, face the threats ahead, and in doing so, forge a future that was uniquely theirs. Clara felt a surge of determination rise within her, igniting a fire that had been smoldering since the moment she had stepped into Luca's world. The weight of their situation pressed against them like a storm brewing on the horizon, yet she was no longer afraid. "We can't let Marco dictate our lives," she declared, her voice steady and resolute. "We have to take control of our future." Luca's brow furrowed, his expression a mixture of admiration and concern. "It's not that simple, Clara. Marco doesn't just play by the rules. He will retaliate. He always does." His words hung in the air, a stark reminder of the danger that loomed over them. But Clara could feel the strength of their bond, forged in the fires of confrontation and vulnerability. "I understand the risks," she replied, her eyes locking onto his with unwavering resolve. "But I refuse to be a pawn in someone else's game. I want to fight for us, for what we can build together." The passion in her voice surged, filling the space between them with a palpable energy. Luca studied her, searching for any hint of hesitation, but all he found was a fierce determination that both thrilled and terrified him. "You're not just a common woman anymore, Clara. You're tangled in this life now, and it's dangerous." He stepped closer, the air between them thick with tension. "What if I can't protect you? What if I fail?" Clara reached out, her hand brushing against his, grounding him in the moment. "You won't fail, Luca. You've already shown me that you're willing to fight for what matters. We can face this together." The sincerity in her voice echoed in the depths of his heart, awakening a fierce protectiveness that had been buried beneath layers of duty and fear. He took a deep breath, the weight of her words settling into his bones. "You're right. This is about more than just us now. It's about dismantling the chains that bind us to our pasts." The resolve in his voice mirrored the strength he saw in her, and in that moment, they both understood that their connection was more profound than either had anticipated. As they stood there, the world outside faded away, leaving only the two of them and the promise of what lay ahead. Clara felt a sense of empowerment wash over her, a realization that she was no longer just a bystander in her own life. "Then let's make a plan," she suggested, her mind racing with possibilities. "We need to be strategic about this. If Marco is going to come after us, we need to be ready." Luca nodded, impressed by her tenacity. "I know a few allies who might help us. People who owe me favors and can provide protection." The flicker of hope ignited within him, and he felt a renewed sense of purpose. "But we have to be careful. Trust is a luxury in this world." "Then we'll build our own team," Clara replied, her eyes sparkling with determination. "We'll find those who believe in us, in what we're fighting for." The thought thrilled her, and she could almost see the future they could create together, a future unshackled from the shadows of their pasts. Just then the door swung open, and a familiar face stepped into the room. It was Marco, his expression unreadable, but the tension in the air thickened immediately. Clara's heart raced, but she stood firm beside Luca, ready to face whatever came next. "I see you two are getting cozy," Marco said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "What's the plan? A little rebellion?" Luca stepped forward, his body radiating strength and control. "You can't intimidate us anymore, Marco. Your reign of terror ends here." The defiance in his voice was unmistakable, and Clara felt a rush of pride at his words. They were no longer cowering in fear. They were ready to confront the darkness together. Marco chuckled, but there was an edge to his laughter. "You think you can just walk away from this? You have no idea the lengths I will go to keep what's mine." The threat hung in the air, but Clara felt a sense of clarity wash over her. "I'm not yours, Marco," she declared, her voice steady. "I'm choosing my own path, and it's not with you." The strength in her declaration reverberated through the room, and she could see the flicker of surprise in Marco's eyes. Luca moved closer to Clara, his protective instincts kicking in. "You've underestimated us, Marco. We're not afraid anymore." He extended his hand, a silent gesture of unity between them. Clara took it, feeling the warmth of his palm against hers, a reminder of the bond they had formed amidst chaos. "Consider this your final warning," Marco said, his expression darkening. "You won't get far without consequences." With that, he turned on his heel and strode out, leaving a heavy silence in his wake. Clara felt the tension dissipate, replaced by a sense of freedom she had never known. "We did it," she breathed, her voice a mixture of disbelief and exhilaration. "We stood our ground." Lucas smiled, a genuine warmth radiating from him. "And we'll keep standing together, no matter what happens next." As they stepped toward the future, hand in hand, Clara knew that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. Yet, with Luca by her side, she felt ready to face whatever the world threw at them. Their connection had deepened, forged in the fires of adversity, and for the first time, she felt a sense of belonging in a world that had once seemed foreign and terrifying. Together, they would navigate the complexities of their intertwined lives, embracing the uncertainties while building a future that was uniquely their own. The promise of tomorrow shimmered in their eyes, a beacon of hope amidst the shadows of their pasts, and Clara knew that whatever came next, they would face it together, as partners, as allies, and as something more. In that moment, she understood the true meaning of loyalty, not just to the past, but to the present and the future they were determined to create. And with that realization, Clara felt a new chapter unfolding before them, filled with promise, adventure, and the undeniable power of love.